With such a notable shortage of women over the past decades, one might expect that the Chinese citizenry would safeguard the rarer gender, taking extra measures to protect their safety and well-being. Is that the case? Stick around and let's find out. At the beginning of 2022, a photo of a chained woman found in China's Suzhou city went viral. It was discovered she was a victim of human trafficking and was used as the family's slave. Her gruesome story includes birthing children from various men. This enraged many in China that had lost daughters to human trafficking. Abduction of girls and young women is not uncommon in mainland China, where the ratio is 113 men for every 100 women in the 15 to 24 age group. With the shortage of women over the past decades, one might expect that the Chinese citizenry would safeguard the rarer gender, taking extra measures to protect their safety and well-being. Is that the case? Unfortunately, that has not been the case. During the recent zero-COVID lockdowns in China, 2 women were brutally disciplined and once again unnecessarily tied up. Their crime? The women were guilty of violating the strict pandemic rules. While their hands were forcibly tied behind their backs, they were publicly shamed by their zero-COVID policy enforcers. This happened in southern China's Guangzhou city and sparked anger among netizens and Chinese social media. U.S.-based China expert Tang Jiangwan pointed out that when the local authorities have the power to punish individuals without a trial, it indicates the Chinese Communist Party has created an environment where various social groups are pitted against one another. This environment is made possible under the so-called modern governance model. According to Chinese media, on November 17th, the 2 women were picking up a delivery from a restaurant. One of the women wasn't wearing a mask, resulting in a confrontation with the zero-COVID enforcers at the community checkpoint. The local police department issued a notice the next day claiming the 2 women, Wang and Li, both 23 years old, ignored pandemic protocols by attempting to force their way out of a checkpoint near the entrance of a residential community. It stated that Li was not wearing a mask and her health code was yellow as a result of skipping the obligatory nucleic acid test since October 30th. A yellow code on the Citizens Health app results in restrictions, including being denied access to public areas. The report claims that a group of COVID control workers repeatedly advised Wang and Li during the confrontation, but the 2 women refused to cooperate. The 2 young women allegedly insulted the staff and were later restrained and controlled. The incident was caught on video, showing 2 women walking toward a residential checkpoint. The woman in gray was stopped by security for not wearing a mask, and an argument ensued that lasted several minutes. The video also shows some onlookers intervening, requesting the COVID staff give the woman a mask and let her go. But the staff waved them off and refused. Then, one of the staff grabbed the woman dressed in black that was wearing a mask and forcibly tied her up. The action was swift and sudden. The woman's arms and legs were bound, forcing her to lie on the ground. The woman in gray was then grabbed from behind by 2 men and thrust to the ground, and had her arms and legs similarly bound. She worked her body upright so she could at least kneel on the ground. She maintained this kneeling posture, looking straight ahead. In regard to the unnecessary show of force during this incident and the heated debate on Chinese social media, Tang believes light is being shed on serious law enforcement problems. On Tang's YouTube channel, November 18th, he summarizes 2 opposing views among mainland Chinese. One of the women broke public rules by not wearing a mask, and the 2 attempted to force their way out of a checkpoint. So first of all, they violated the COVID rules. Second, they insulted the staff. Therefore, when they were subdued and tied up, some say that it's a good thing because they deserved it. The other view believes that although the 2 women violated the rules but did not commit any illegal acts that would endanger the public, the COVID staff did not have the right to enforce the law or restrict personal freedom, let alone humiliate them in public through violence. Tang says that of these 2 viewpoints, he agrees with the latter. He says, the core issue of the incident lies in the law enforcement power. The women's violation of the COVID regulations is of secondary importance. He explains the latter argument is also incomplete. That is, the workers who carry out the pandemic measures in China have, in fact, been given a considerable degree of law enforcement power, although not explicitly. This is a very serious problem. Tang explained the argument between the women and the COVID control workers should be treated as a civil work dispute and conflict. When the staff threw the two women to the ground violently and used equipment to bind and restrain them, they were actually using law enforcement power targeting criminal offenses. Tang further pointed out that only law enforcement officers have the authority to restrict personal freedoms when carrying out their official duties to subdue and restrain suspects when necessary. He says, as for COVID staff, by the nature of their duty, they can only advise or stop residents. At every step of the conflict, the workers could have taken a reasonable approach to solving the problem, but they chose to ignore other options. In fact, what they have done constitutes illegal detention. The CCP's State Council issued a document on April 28, 2021, stating that to strengthen and modernize grassroots agencies, the central authorities had decided to give administrative and law enforcement powers to the townships and neighboring communities. Tang says, this document may seem insignificant, but it is a major change in the political structure under the Chinese Communist Party. He goes on to explain that not since the Cultural Revolution were law enforcement powers delegated below the county level. After the CCP seized power in mainland China in 1949, neither the communities nor the townships had direct administrative and punitive powers, and their function was to pass on the directives from the upper level to the lower levels. Tang clarified that the new document has since granted grassroots agencies law enforcement power. This makes lower local staff, judge, jury, and executioner within their jurisdiction at the grassroots level. Tang is saying that this is the same concept as the authoritarian governance by the masses in the Cultural Revolution, only under a new cloak of modern governance. This approach was actually meant for the party to mobilize a group of politically reliable citizens at the bottom of society to carry out the party's will. Today, the CCP's zero-COVID policy is to be strictly enforced, and anyone charged with sabotaging epidemic prevention can be subjected to arbitrary punishment, according to Tang. He says the two women being tied up and having to endure public humiliation is an example of the authoritarian governance by the masses, as the current pandemic control is also a revolution that calls for civilians' participation at the grassroots level. Tang is concerned about where this is going based on the Cultural Revolution's bloody past and brutal outcome. He says, the Pandora's box has been opened, and it's just a matter of time before the evil inside is gradually released. 上海犯人！上海犯人！